On today's episode of Locked On Wild, a little adversity for the Minnesota Wild. Can they handle it and get back on track this week? Plus, what is going on in Iowa?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, that. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your favorite audio platforms. No matter where you listen, we appreciate having you with us each and every day of the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we recap first real clunker of the season for the Minnesota Wild against the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll talk about what went wrong and, more importantly, how the Wild bounced back and get back in the win column after their first real adversity of the season. We'll take a look at the numbers for their opponents this week and why it may be a problem if the Wild can't pot a couple of 5-on-5 goals over the next few games. And we'll talk about the still winless through 7 games of the season Iowa Wild. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021, credentialed media member, and joined, as mentioned, by Alex Micheletti. Not a victory Micheletti Monday because turns out if you spot a team 2 goals in the first 4 minutes of the game, it's kind of hard to come away with a win. But Alex, it was interesting. John Hynes talked about this after the game, and you will hear some of John Hynes' thoughts with our 3 games recap, which is coming out later today. He talked about the fact that the team still played pretty good, considering the first 4 minutes just were not great at all. He's not wrong. Especially in the first and second periods, the Wild controlled play for large stretches. The third period just went off the rails, and Philly had an answer every time the Wilds seemed to regain their footing. It just goes right back to the old adage of if you let a team that you should beat hang around, you're going to pay the price every time.
Yeah, Philly had 1 win, right? They were just, not buying into John Tortorella's, way of, going about things early here, and their goaltending is not great. So, but credit to the Wild for hanging in there. A lot of teams would give up, but credit to them for just at least making it a game. But naturally, too, we saw Sean Couturier, who had not scored in 32 games going back to last season, and he ends up with the hat trick. Yeah, it's just naturally against the Wild. But you could tell there was some frustration. You saw Marcus Foligno was not happy with Garnet Hathaway after the game with the BS comment he threw out there. I thought he was going to get fined, but so far so good. Marcus has not had to take out the checkbook, but just like you said, just off the rails in the third period. They never seem to play well in Philadelphia. I don't know why that is, but just a weird game overall at noon on a Saturday.
Yeah, that was the first thing, is that the Wild just are not a team that does as well. I think Dan pulled it up in the postcast. They were 6-3-3 in games before 4 p.m. Central Time last year. And it's, going from the Central Division, there are a lot of different things that you can point to. Number one, this being game 6 of 7 on the road. It's seeming like, especially after a couple of games against Florida and against Tampa Bay, seems like the legs are starting to get a little tired on this road trip. Hynes, I was encouraged by the fact that Hynes said, they're going to get an opportunity for a day off and still be able to get a really good practice in, which we have we've tried to give praise to John Hines wherever possible because like there's been a bunch of impressive stuff that they've put on film so far this year. I think another one that I'll give him credit for is the team is practicing substantially more than they did even last year. Like we always heard about, need to just give guys an opportunity. It's a long, grueling season. We need to be adding in days off. Well, turns out as you get into the season and everything looks kind of rusty, maybe practice days aren't a bad idea. And so they've practiced a ton more so far this season. Not an accident that John Hines preaches details a lot because you can work on those in practice and kind of get back to your game. So they're going to practice before the Pittsburgh game. And I don't know. I think really the big thing that sticks in my head about that Philly game is just the number of goals up in close. And there's blame to be pointed at both sides. The team defense, Philip Gustafsson, there were some pucks that just got loose in the crease. Nobody could seem to get to them. The game-winning goal, in fact, just sitting in the crease. Philip Gustafsson was looking behind him. Puck's not there. Nobody else could get to the puck in the crease, and Couturier just slam dunks it home. So stuff like that is frustrating. And I think that's a large reason is that Philly just had way more success in front of the net than the Wild did.
Yeah, this was Gus's first clunker. And now, like you said, to open up the show, this is the first adversity of the season. And you don't, I don't recall this happening too much, but they have 2 off days in Pittsburgh. So that, it gives, maybe some time for some bonding. And, you got Fleury making his last ever start for the team that he was drafted by. So, there's going to be a lot of focus on the Penguins matchup. And if I was Sidney Crosby or Chris Letang or Malkin, I'd watch out for my cars with all the with the off time.
He's
Fleury has right now.
Fleury's going to walk into the opposing or the home locker room, and he's going to freeze like all the jerseys. He's going to just throw them in the shower and then freeze them solid.
Watch the skates and the gloves for sure.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens, and we'll talk more about those games kind of as the show moves on. But Marcus Foligno, couple of goals in this one, and you look at this line combination with Ryan Hartman having missed the last handful of games. Marcus Foligno, Freddie Gaudreau, and Yakov Trenin as a combination. There might be a little something there.
Yeah, it's you have an injury happen, and then you get a line that is kind of just unorthodox together, and it's starting to work. And maybe Freddie is the one to get Yakov Trenin and Marcus Foligno going. Who would have ever thought? A former cardio boy gets the 2 beasts going. It's good for Marcus because when he's engaged in the game, it feeds the energy for the rest of the team, I think. And just getting a goal for him is, I think, going to do wonders. Just because there's been so much pressure on him, and there was an article, maybe it was a athletic bump, but they started talking about that line, and then they had their best game of the season so far. So
got to get him on Locked On Wild to get that tangible bump going.
Look what it's done for Matt Boldy.
listen to these numbers. Foligno, Gaudreau, and Trenin had an expected goals percentage of 80.6 in the 9 minutes that they were on the ice together. They had a Corsi for percentage of 77.8. And again, when I bring these up, I like to just point it out for those that maybe are hearing these stats for the first time or aren't 100% sure of how they work. Corsi percentage is determined by the number of shots either for your team or against your team when you're on the ice. And so 70% of the time, 77% of the time, when Marcus Foligno, Freddie Gaudreau, and Yakov Trenin were on the ice, shots on goal were for the Minnesota Wild. Those are great numbers. And that's from your checking line. So that combination, John Hines talked about this after the game too. It took that combination a little time to get things figured out, but I would say over the last 3 games, that combination has been pretty darn good for the Wild. Now, what will happen when Ryan Hartman returns? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, because that's a big conundrum, right? Because look at the way that Marco Rossi is playing with Kirill. I mean, he's starting to really heat up, being on that with those top end guys. So, do you put Marco back on the third line? I don't know. It just it's a big conundrum right now for sure.
I if I were coaching would not. I maybe look at I don't know, because
it's tough, right? Because they seem unwilling to ever move Marcus Johansson. They don't.
Yeah.
No matter what he does, it seems like he is locked in there.
To Marcus Johansson's credit, he has been more off than on this year, but I would say the Philly game was probably one of his more off performances. I just want to make sure that I have that accurate.
The second line was getting hemmed in a little bit as a whole.
He had one hit, and that was the only stat that he had in the 17 minutes 26 seconds he played. So
and as we know, that can happen with him sometimes, where he just disappears, or he's just out there.
Not the first time.
Right. Yeah. As we know.
Not the first time that's happened. We did also see, I just want to throw this out there. We did also get a little taste of Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Joel Eriksson Ek. They played 2 minutes and 7 seconds together and scored a goal as a combination. So that was a nice little wrinkle. All told, Foligno, Gaudreau, Trenin were +2 in goals. Kaprizov, Rossi, Zuccarello were -1. Johansson, Eriksson Ek, Boldy were -2. Ogren, Huznadinov, and Lauko were -1. Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, Zuccarello was a +1 in the goals department. They got a minute together. So John Hines did some juggling late in that game to try to influence the offense, but defense and goaltending mostly just up in the stands eating popcorn.
Yeah, it was tough to watch at points. It's like, oh my gosh, another goal. And like when Middleton's goal went in, it was just like on both sides too. Some of the goals, it's like, this is all quality saves.
I audibly laughed when the Middleton goal went in, because of all of the goals that were scored, that was the one that had the least likelihood of being a goal.
Like this went in, like what?
Just a clean shot from the left side of the zone, right across the blue line, just lets it fly, just trying to get something on net. And Urson just like the dad in those As Seen on TV commercials where he's trying to wash his car and he just like fumbles everything and falls down.
I can't imagine either of those two trying to talk to Tortorella after the game or in the locker room. Oh my goodness, that's the one coach where it's like, oh my,
not great. I'm sure that was like sought him out the moment the game was done. Like, come here. So it's adversity, and the Minnesota Wild will either meet it. The key is going to be, do you let this snowball into multiple games, or is this a flat tire or a bump in the road, to use a Gus Bus analogy? We'll talk about those the games this week more in a little bit, but we got to take a look at what's going on with the 0-6-1 Iowa Wild. We'll dive into the numbers, and we'll try to answer the question, what should the focus be for the Iowa Wild this year? That is on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For instance, Jordan Mason last night. Had him on my fantasy team. I'm going to lose this week because he got hit after accumulating 18 yards, shoulder injury, done for the day. But if you had him in your Prize Picks lineup and he got hurt and didn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, we will have you covered after the game tomorrow night. Locked On Wild postcast. Whatever the result ends up being, we'll have fun. We always do. Hopefully it'll be a win, but sometimes there's just more to talk about in a loss. Unless it's a loss like the game against Philly where it's like, well, you don't do this or you don't do this. Pretty simple to determine the outcome. Speaking of pretty simple to determine the outcome, Alex, the Iowa Wild right now, 0-6-1. They have 1 point in the first 7 games of the season. They have surrendered 31 goals in the 7 games so far. And whether it be how things went last year, seems like it's at this point the same story that we've seen from this Iowa team. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I'm starting to get really worried about Jesper, just his confidence with what's in front of him. That's the plan was for him to be with the Wild, and that the plan went off. It didn't even make it. So, and now he's stuck with an Iowa team that looks like it has no hope, right? Or if they do have hope, they're going to have to get it fixed right away because it's not good for anybody down there.
No,
especially Jesper.
I should preface the Wild have actually given up 34 goals in the 7 games, which is actually it's the most goals allowed in the entire AHL by 6. They are 6 clear of the Henderson Silver Knights. They're one of only 2 teams that have yet to record a win so far this season. And the 15 goals scored puts them at tied for 24th with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. There are only the Abbotsford Canucks, Bakersfield Condors, Coachella Valley Firebirds, Providence Bruins, Utica Comets, Ontario Reign, and the Chicago Wolves that have scored fewer goals. And I guess it could be worse. The Chicago Wolves have scored 6 goals in 5 games.
Oh boy.
So, but you look at the individual performances here. Ryan O'Rourke, no points and a -8 in 7 games. David Spacek, 1 assist and a -5 in 7 games. Jack Pert, no points, -4 in 4 games. Carson Lambos, 2 assists in 5 games. He's a -2. Kyle Masters, 1 assist in 4 games. He's a -2. Damon Hunt, 1 assist in 2 games. He's a -2. A lot of minuses. And then on the special teams side, like just looking at the special teams numbers, The Iowa Wilds have a 12.9% power play. They've got 4 power play goals and 31 opportunities, but they've given up 4 shorthanded goals. And their penalty kill, they've given up 7 power play goals and 26 shorthanded opportunities. Like this is what brings me to the question that I wanted to try to tackle here in this segment is like, what is the goal? What is the aim of this Iowa Wild team? I feel like your AHL team should be about development first, and the wins will come.
Yeah, I'm 100%. But even there seems to be no development. It has not improved. Like there was change over the off season, and it seems like it's still the same. That's what's scary. And these crew of kids are supposed to be the next, the next iteration of the big club. And so it's kind of frightening for, like when you said O'Rourke's numbers, even if you're not, contributing on the score sheet, well, part of the score sheet, the minus is that's outrageous.
Yeah, it's just concerning, and I think this is the reason that Matt Hendricks was brought in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was for him to have, because this is part of how the organizational structure goes for many GMs around the league, is your assistant GM handles the day-to-day for the AHL team. Well, guess what the Wild didn't have for a majority of the season last year was an assistant GM after Chris O'Hearn and the organization mutually agreed to part ways. Still a lot of clouds as to that whole situation. And so you bring in Matt Hendricks to have a keen eye and to be able to look at what this organization is doing on a day-to-day basis. I would have to imagine he's probably not pleased.
No, it's, he's in a major front office role for the first time, and to not have a single win yet is got to be very, very frustrating for him. And, he played in the NHL for a long time and, highly competitive guy himself. And so it has to be eating him for sure.
And you look at the numbers here, like let's talk about the goalie situation. Jesper is 0-3-1. He's got a 4.89 goals against average and an 8.58 save percentage. Samuel Levi, 0-2. He has a 4.78 goals against average and a 7.76 save percentage. William Russo is 0-1. He's got a 3.09 and an 8.64 save percentage. Collectively, you're at a 4.85 and an 8.30 save percentage.
Oh.
And I the more I learn about the game of hockey, the more I understand how much of a kind of tightrope tug of war it is between defense and goalies. Sometimes the goals are the defense's fault. Sometimes they're the goalie's fault. Numbers like that,
especially the save percentage. That the goals against is what it is, but the save percentage, oh man,
they've given up 34 goals on 200 shots.
Yeah, that's that's not all on the defense, but it's all the goalie's got it's a nightmare situation, and maybe this coaching staff is a little above its skis over its head right now, and they have to really figure things out fast here.
I will be shocked if this continues, if there isn't some sort of a change made, because this is why an organization needs to have full alignment all the way up and down. And it seemed last year like there just was kind of this disconnect.
Oh, 100%. They lost their captain right away too, because he had Dakota Mermis had to be with the team, the big club team for pretty much all season, because of Spurgeon going. It just was chaos from the beginning.
Yeah, it's they just need to get some uniform messaging. Tell Iowa what you are looking for the team to achieve.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Bill Guerin go down there soon. Just
yeah, maybe now that they're finally going to be back home after this long road trip. Wouldn't surprise. I agree. It wouldn't surprise me if he makes a house call down there just to see what's going on.
Help settle things down. And
yeah,
it's gotta be crazy for Jesper Wallstedt because they told him to get a place in Minnesota, and now he's not at that place ever. Yeah, and it can't be easy for him and his girlfriend. Yeah, it's there's a lot to figure out here.
Yeah, and his two most recent starts have been better. Mm-hmm. He started the year, he gave up 12 goals in the first 100 minutes he played. The last two games, on the 23rd, he played against Milwaukee, gave up 3 goals. But again, not a high volume of shots, just 24 shots against. Against Texas, he gave up 3 goals on 36 shots. And that game went into OT. That was a loss in OT, 3-2. So,
and Dallas is they're loaded. So yeah, it's
trending in the right direction, but you got to get the messaging on point for the organization. Like let's get the development going for these guys because you're expecting a lot from some of these prospects.
Well, especially on the back end too, it's a make it or break it year for a lot of these guys.
Yeah,
because Z Williams coming. So, and they all know that. They all have to know that. They have to see how well he's playing, and realize that hey, he's joining the ranks, and you guys are going to go down, slots. Merson Lambos, like he was a first round pick too, and it seems like Zeev has more talent than him. So it's that's going to be one to watch for sure.
It should be a situation where you, in the back of your head, say, "Hey, I better show something here because Zeev is going to be fast tracked." And
100%.
He should be, right? Because, like you said, he's incredibly talented.
50 plus points as a defenseman, like that is amazing.
It's not ideal, but there is time to get everything righted. It's early in the Iowa season, but what is the old saying? It's getting late early.
Yes, and the wheels of the train are they've come. They're flying off. They're trying not to go over the mountain. I don't know what they're gonna do, but it's there's a lot for Matt Hendricks to figure out. And like you said, get the bat signal out for Bill Guerin to make it. He's gonna hop in the car. 35 is gonna turn into the Autobahn for Bill Guerin.
Like I said during the postcast against Philly, this is the point at which you are dusting off the glass, the in case of emergency glass. You're not going to hit it yet, but you're dusting it off. You're making sure that you're ready, that if things continue, you've got a clear path to be able to punch that thing and get some assistance. But we'll keep an eye out because the road trip will officially come to an end tomorrow as the Minnesota Wild will take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll look at the numbers for the games upcoming this week. Some tough opponents, but guess what? Defense, kind of optional. So we'll talk about that as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can get the season started with a bang with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You may have thought that the Washington Commanders were going to have a a win in their game against the Chicago Bears. And you were probably feeling pretty upset when Chicago scored to take the lead. But hey, it's the NFL. Crazy things happen. Hail Mary where nobody on the Bears covers the end zone. And so if that was your $5 bet and you had the Commanders, congratulations. $150 in bonus bets. And you got to sweat through the entire game to make sure and see if it happened. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, we've got a second episode coming for you today. Our Three Things recap. We'll hear from John Hines directly about some of the things that happened throughout the course of the game, such as facing adversity, overcoming deficits, and giving up 6-on-5 goals. Which has been a bit of a struggle so far for the Minnesota Wild. We'll break all that down for you with a bonus episode coming later today. But first, Alex, let's take a look at what we have in store for the week here for the Minnesota Wild. A 2-1 week for the Wild last week with wins over Florida, Tampa Bay, and then a loss to Philly. Wild take on the Pittsburgh Penguins to finish off their 7-game road trip in which they are currently 4-1-1. Marc-Andre Fleury in net, his final game in Pittsburgh where he spent the bulk of his career. Going to be an emotional game. But the number that I go to almost exclusively, you know who has allowed the most 5-on-5 goals in the NHL so far this season? The Pittsburgh Penguins. They have allowed 31. Now I'm not talking goals in general. I'm talking strictly even strength 5-on-5 goals. They've allowed 31 5-on-5 goals through 10 games so far this season. And so guess what the Minnesota Wild should probably do in that matchup is try to keep it 5-on-5.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they. You want to talk about a team that has a goalie crisis? It is the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's hideous. Jari's. He's been awful. Nedeljkovic has. I don't think he's ever been really good. Yeah, and yeah, it's just it's not. It's hideous.
3-6-1 on the season, and you mentioned the goaltending. Collectively, a 4.2 goals against average, and an .885 save percentage. 42 goals allowed in 10 games this year.
I mean, they have, you take a look at, their D-core. I mean, Erik Karlsson, he doesn't really play defense. He's all offense. Chris Letang, pretty much the same thing. It's just, it's a hideous, D pairings. Marcus Pettersson's nothing. Matt Grzelcyk, I think he's always been overrated. He was with the Bruins for a long time. And Ryan Graves, his career's kind of plateaued from when he was with Colorado and Devils. It's just St. Ivany is like minor leaguer rookie. It's not a good D-core for sure.
No, Chris Letang is a -6 on the season. Erik Karlsson is a -7 on the season. Matt Grzelcyk -6. Evgeny Malkin is a -3. Sidney Crosby is a -7. Not the worst on the team, though, that's Drew O'Connor. He is a -8. Just some of the other numbers for this Penguins team. They're 13th in the league on the power play at 20.7. Their penalty kills at 82.1. So, again, I beg, just win this one at 5-on-5, please.
Don't make it go to overtime. Let Fleury have a relaxing night. It's a confusing team. You feel for Sidney Crosby too, because a lot of the nights he deserves so much better. The way he's continuing to play, it's gotta be frustrating. And them losing Gensel was just just killer because they never really replaced him.
No, they have not. And you go then from Pittsburgh to the Tampa Bay Lightning, a rematch, and we know the story there. It's a Lightning team, ton of weapons. You play them here at the X, first home game in 7 games for the Wild. It's a similar story though. Like you look at what happens against the Lightning on the road. Is the Wild faced a deficit because things kind of went pear-shaped for about 4 minutes in the second period, but then the Wild tied it up. They took the lead for good in the third period. Other than that, they played right with them. I would expect that the Wild should be able to hold more offensive push this game because they're at home. Tampa pushed plenty, but the Wild weathered it, and they went right back on the offensive themselves. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are
a goofy team.
Very weird. They are struggling to score. They're averaging under 3 goals per game so far this year. Their power play is one of the worst in the league. And so Craig Berube clearly came in and said, hey, I see everything that's working for us. Let's completely flip the script. No, it's a slow start for Toronto, but it's a dangerous team. These are all dangerous teams. They're all have players that are capable of doing dangerous things. And so I would just much rather not walk the tightrope in the danger zone, if you get my drift.
100%. It's all 3 of these teams, like you said, have guys that can hat tricks. Like it's scary. You're playing some legends of the game, like Pittsburgh, Crosby, Malkin, Carlson, Letang. These guys have, look at Toronto. Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, and then Tampa's such a weird team to figure out too, because they don't have a whole lot of depth, but their top line, are you kidding me? Gensel, Point, and Kucherov. Yeah,
disgusting.
And anytime, same thing, Malkin will want to try to one up, Kaprizov, but these Russians, they want to be the top dog. They see these guys in the off season, and they're all buddies, and it seems like all the Russians live in Florida in the off season now too. But they're all really close knit, and they want to one up each other and say, hey, yeah, I was the best player in the game. So, Kaprizov's going to be extremely motivated, and it's, but what a treat to watch Nikita Kucherov, right? It's just when he has the puck, it's like the puck is on a string. It's incredible to watch. And so, I'm looking forward to this week because, they're fun matchups. Even if Pittsburgh is down a little bit, that should be super fun to see Fleury in his last ever start there. And, I'm sure it's going to be super emotional for him. And I'm sure his family will be there. And so, I hope the Wild can get him a win. It was just like last season when Alex Goligoski got the game-winning goal in his the 1,000th game. It was pretty cool. Yeah,
it'll be. I'm sure he wants nothing more than to just get it done, get it out of the way, get the win.
Typical, pro.
Yeah, but then the nice thing is that the Wild do have a formula that has won them games so far this season. It's a matter of, can they get back to it, or do they kind of slide into this Philadelphia game? Again, I'll say it over and over and over. Is the Philadelphia game a speed bump or a flat tire?
That's, like we talked about earlier in the episode too, these matinee games, I don't want to make that big of an excuse for it, but it's just, it's hey, why, it's chaos, having a game that early, and
it's chaos, and Philly that's the exact style of game that Philly wanted to play.
100%. When you only have one win, and you're really you're really grinding to get a
Yeah.
win, and you're hearing that's a city that can get on its players in a nasty way, and so
Yeah.
they needed a win, and I'm sure Torts is hearing it from everybody. So
The Philly game was bare knuckle boxing at the back of the bar.
I mean, they had guys doing cheap shots, and it was
let's not do that again.
No. well, and I'm sure the Wild are. Thank you for Pittsburgh for the hospitality compared to Philly. So.
Yeah, well, they call it the city of brotherly love, but it was anything but. At least on the ice.
It is.
Well, we'll see what happens, but that'll do it for today's episode. Again, reminder: we got another episode coming up for you later today. The 3 Things recap with some of John Hines' comments after the loss to the Flyers on Saturday. So you can hear that coming up later today. Also, make sure to subscribe if you have not already so you don't miss out on any new episodes. You can find us on YouTube and all of your favorite audio platforms with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.